Hello, everyone. We are just waiting for people to join, and then we will get started.
All right. So welcome everyone. Right. Okay. So I'm Janina, and I'm thrilled to be here with you again today, alongside our sales director Samantha Perry. Welcome to today's webinar, We Suite Mastering Recurring Revenue. Today we will walk you through the RMR module, Test and Inspection module, and Finance and Leasing module, and we'll show you how to streamline RMR estimating, improving accuracy, and maximizing long-term profitability. So whether you're new to these modules or looking to optimize your current workflow, this session will give you actionable insights and best practices to elevate your recurring revenue strategy. And by the end of this webinar, you should be able to confidently estimate various types of recurring services, calculate inspection sales, price and offer third-party or in-house finance options, and apply best practices to identify and grow recurring revenue opportunities. So as always, we want you to get the most out of today's session. So if you have any questions at any point, don't hesitate to ask. If you need us to slow down, revisit a point, or dive deeper into something, just drop your questions in the chat and I will read them and answer, and Sam will answer them also. So yeah, let's dive right in.
Awesome. Thanks, Janina. Welcome, everybody. Um, Today, we're going to focus on all things RMR, and the action items really focus on a lot of what we have out of the box with selling recurring revenue, and then we also have a number of add-on modules like test and inspection and the finance lease module that can help to build recurring revenue. So I wanted to start today with a job that I already had baked here, and specifically talk about the different recurring services that I have in my demonstration system. As many of you each will have custom RMR items within your system that you are probably familiar with. But let's start by when selling recurring revenue, you will have an entire list of RMR services that will be stored in your database. Some of you may have a toggle here where you can read recurring services from WeSuite or some integrated accounting system, or you may have it defaulted to be reading from your accounting system or your WeSuite system. In my case, I have WeSuite items mapped to my accounting system, and I can see that with this little map icon here. Now, the reason I might use WeSuite items in lieu of accounting items and instead map them together is that WeSuite can support creating all the different types of recurring items where you may have more generalized on the accounting side, for example, if I type in monitoring, I have lots of different flavors of monitoring. Could be, monthly, annual, gold, silver, platinum type of thing. And then those could all roll up into a single invoice item on the accounting side. Or you may do calculated items, and I see that a lot with service and maintenance agreements, and helping to facilitate a salesperson in pricing these. And so you can see when I type in service, I have my 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, my gold, my silver, and they are based off of different calculations on the job. So if I went ahead and took my access control system and grabbed my 3-year service agreement and dropped it onto that folder, I already have it on my job here. You can see down below, it then automatically added 1747 to my monthly recurring because it's taking 5% of the total system cost. It's also defaulting the term and the billing frequency, and which will then continue to autofill the term total and the recurring annual. Now, if I have the user rights, you may be able to override these figures and say, well, I'm just going to make it a flat 1800, or I'm going to up this to 6 or 7%. But for many of you, you kind of already have this predetermined, and so that will auto-calculate for me. Whereas when I'm adding something like monitoring, I had this as a direct charge, video monitoring $34.99. I added that to my video folder, and I see that line item showing here with a quantity of 1, a monthly sell price, and then a default term and billing frequency. Now, if you are selling subscription RMR, like camera licenses or storage, or anything that needs more than a quantity of 1, I'll take this camera license, drag and drop, and let's say I have 8 cameras on the job, so I need 8 licenses. So I can go ahead and add that. And so you can determine a quantity with your recurring items as well. So 8 times 12 is 96, and everything else is following suit. If we continue then on to the document, you will notice that you will have a section on if you would like to show the recurring items on your quote, and if you would like to display the line item and the extended cell, or you may only want to show the grand total. In this case, I'm showing the full boat of the item, the line item, and the extended cell. So let's go ahead and regenerate my proposal. And if we move to my folder summary section, you'll see that each folder will have a section for professional services. That's just how I have it labeled in my particular proposal. You may have your recurring services named something different, but in my case, the label is professional services. I see the service agreement and access, the monitoring and camera licenses in my video, and we're going to come back to the fire alarm with my inspection. Now, if I did not choose show line item, or if I turned off show extended cell, it would keep my line items within the folder, but hide the extended cell here. And if I turn off both show line item and extended cell, I'll instead only see the professional services within my grand total financial summary. So some of you may similarly have it at the very end of the document and maybe not show the per line item within the folders if you didn't want to, and then kind of separately say, okay, this is a $17,000 project, 50% deposit, 50% due upon completion, and then your monthly professional services. Now in my system, I can come into the billing frequency and I can change everything from monthly to some other frequency. Some of you have it within the grid like this. Others may actually have right on your checkbox tree selecting a different term. So I can just want to get familiar with your system there to see if in order to change term on the document, it's driven by a checkbox on this tree, or it could be driven from the estimate itself. I usually recommend, if possible, to do it from the estimate, because then that makes sure that when you win the job, the reporting in the system matches the document, matches what eventually goes into your accounting system as well. And then term length as well, I can go ahead and update this. But there is also in the bottom right corner, if I wanted to fix a global term, meaning if I had all various different default terms and I wanted to fix it all to being 60 months instead, I can do that. And it's going to update all the term lengths in my entire job to 60 months. And that may also trigger language on proposals or contracts to change because I've now updated the term length. And if there are any questions so far, please enter them into the chat. I'm going to move on to some under the hood calculations and then move to inspection. So I know this is a user webinar, but I do want to kind of show under the hood. If I go to editors and my RMR codes, these are the different options in which you could calculate your recurring services on. We have recently added in our latest version of 6.11 total folder cell and total folder cost. We always had, you can see from these options, equipment cost cell, labor cost cell, specific labor hours, if there's only a type of labor category you'd like to calculate it on, total folder parts and labor, total system cost and cell, and through some requests from our users, we developed total folder cost and cell. And so this allows you to maybe do a service or maintenance plan on a particular system. Like I had a 3-year service agreement on the access control system only, but we're not including the video and the fire alarm in that service plan. If I did want to include the entire job, I would use total system cost itself. And then, of course, if you're doing a direct charge, there would be no calculation, and you would just enter in the monthly cost to you as the business, the rate to the customer. You could include a minimum charge, and we're going to come back to finance lease. But if you are operating where you may sell a project at a loss, right, less than what the system costs, and you are calculating a rate creation multiple on how many months it will take you to break even, then you may want to exclude the recurring services that you are selling in addition to that financing from that calculation. In other cases, you might want to include the financing of the install and labor, including the other recurring services that you're selling, like monitoring and service and hosting, to impact that rate creation multiple. If you do not want it to impact the rate creation multiple and you instead exclude it, then you're basically going to have, hey, Mr. Customer, to finance this project is X per month, which may have an expiration if they're paying it off like a lease on a car, or it may just be an indefinite monthly because they're leasing that system and it's still company owned equipment. But in addition to that, they're also paying X for monitoring and X for service. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. You can control the recurring items to have different prices per office. And then this accounting link is kind of how I was mentioning. If you create your WeSuite items and then link them to their counterpart on the accounting system, that allows you to have all the granularity of the services and calculations in WeSuite while being sure they fill into the proper invoice items on the billing side. And if you ever have complaints from the billing team that there's things unmapped, you can easily see from this screen items that are mapped and items that are not mapped. So anything that has a accounting link is good to go and will be recognized, and anything, a lot of items, but anything that's blank, it's going to come up every time they export that item to the accounting system that it's not mapped. So they're manually mapping it every time likely. By mapping it officially to something, then they won't have to do that mapping anymore. Alrighty. So if there are no questions about the recurring revenue kind of out of the box, I'm going to move to the test and inspection module. So the test and inspect module is an add-on to the system as a WeSuite module. So some of you may use this very frequently, and some may not have this on yet. The goal is to help calculate what the cost of an inspection or testing the system is going to be. And so these items, like the recurring revenue items, will have, you know, a price and quantity, but it has an extra piece to it in that you'll see that you'll have time associated to the device itself, and then the cost is applied to that time, and the time is in quantity of minutes. So in this particular job, I've gone and added 4 different types of devices. And so if you just search smoke detector, here's my item. And so I added to the job 8 smoke detectors. I'm sorry, 40 smoke detectors. They each take about 8 minutes to inspect, $1 a minute with a margin of 35%. And so then it's calculating out the extended sell price. This smoke alarm, for example, has no cost, so that's why that's 0, and I can't edit it because in my grid rights I'm not allowed to edit cost. But this is just something that if you are allowed to edit, I could override it, or if not, a price just needs to be stored in the database. But the time and the quantity is often something that you can edit, because then let's say for these smoke alarms, you know, it's not going to take me you know, less than a minute to inspect each one. Maybe there's really high ceilings, and you know, each 10 of these is going to take me 15 minutes. Same with the smoke detectors, standardly 8 minutes each, but if I said, well, it's more difficult because of XYZ, I can override that time factor. And then once you've strung together all of the devices that you are going to be inspecting, you're going to have that grand total then show here. And then you have 2 options. You can either sell this as a one-time outright sale. And so by flipping that on, it's then just going to add as $4,000 of inspection. And there is its own toolbar here at the top. So if you don't have that toolbar on, you can go ahead and turn it on, and you'll see the cost and sell calculating. Or many of you sell sell inspection as a recurring item, in which may even be defaulted to be sold as a recurring item. And in that case, you're going to see a fire inspection. Now, in my case, it's called fire inspection, and the description is fire inspection base fee. Yours may be titled something differently, but it will essentially take the quantity and price of what you sold in inspection and roll it all up into a single RMR line item for the fire inspection. Now, it will default it to annually, but if I wanted to bill this monthly with everything else at 60 months, I can go ahead and do that. Or you may have the fire inspection be a 1-year annual that gets requoted each time, so it will have an alternate frequency. Just keep in mind, if on your document you have mixed frequencies, it will usually take kind of the longest one. So if you had some annual, some monthly, it'll default to annual kind of out of the box. So probably many of you have your document designed to separately show inspection from your standard recurring revenue items. And so under the hood, your team would have linked an RMR item to be that roll up for your fire inspection. It does add one into each folder. So as soon as you create a new job, you may notice that a fire inspection is just sitting there ready to be used. And so if you're not doing an inspection, you can just remove it from all the other folders, which is what I've already done. But you'll see that when you click like all estimate items and you see all your recurring items, you might see, because I have 3 folders, I would have seen fire inspection 3 times, and I just delete the inspections that I don't need in my other folders. But for some of you, you are not only doing fire inspections, you may have a more generic description and it's just inspection. And so you may calculate an inspection for the video system and for the access control system as well, and that may all grand total. And so under the hood, the settings are in the same area. I can go to test and inspect. It can be divided by class, so you can have different categories, which is helpful when you have different system types, and then the items within those system types. And then when you click new item, you're going to see what we went through. You'll assign it to a class, you'll name it, give it a longer description, and then enter in cost per minute, how many minutes it's going to take. You might have a default percentage of devices that you're testing and the annual frequency, and then of course your gross profit margin. In my case, I do have a section of test and inspect boxes to show on the document. It's not usually how I show inspection, but if you do want to line item out the inspection items, or you are selling it as an outright and you want to show it that way rather than as a recurring item, you would use this section. And in my case, I do have it showing as a recurring item, and so that's for my fire alarm here. You can see my fire inspection is at the 4,800 and change. And so your document may look a little different, or again, on your contract documents, it may split out your inspection price from your monitoring, from your service. And so WeSuite works with your system admins to program based on all the different RMR code words and IDs, what type of services apply to this section of the document or trigger certain language versus maybe things that are not inspection. And I did want to mention that in the latest version of Quote Anywhere 6.12 coming out imminently, we're going to start getting it into team sandboxes. The inspection module will also will be here. And so once I open up this job and I go to my folder, you will see Test and Inspect as a new menu to search from. And so you can grab the different items that you need, and you'll see all those same fields that we just saw in WeEstimate. So I can edit if I'm allowed to edit. So you can see these 4 fields are lit up. I'm allowed to touch these, but the time per minute I'm not allowed to touch. And again, this is all based on the user's permissions. Okay. Moving on to the finance lease module, and then I want to go into how to grow your RMR and sell additive RMR, is that you may have a tab in your system called lease. I believe this is one of those tabs you can custom label, so it might be called something else. But like Test and Inspect, the finance lease module is an add-on module to WeSuite, and its purpose is to offer financing, either self or third party. And everyone calls it something different, whether you call it financing, leasing, just security as a service. We can customize however you want it to look on a document. But the way this module works is that the formulas of how to finance or lease a system are typically predefined. And then as a salesperson, you simply just click include, and then once you go to your proposal document, I have one more box to check. Many of you don't. Just by clicking include here, it will automatically add. Let me turn this off too, just to shorten my document a little bit so it's all together. By clicking include my 3-year financing and my 5-year financing, it's going to say, hey, you could buy this job outright for $17,000, or you could finance it with us. Or you could finance it with us for 3 years or for 5 years. Now, this available finance option section may look different for different users. And again, this particular formula I have in here is as if I'm working with a third-party lender, right? And so I have maybe there's a deposit, maybe there's not, if there's an interest rate, and then the term and frequency are really there for display on the document, but the real driver is this rate creation multiple. So what we'll do if you're working with a third-party lender is we'll reverse engineer the formula of ABC Bank and whatever their interest rate is and the monthly amount and back that into a rate creation multiple. And you do have to determine whether you're trying to recoup cost or whether you're trying to recoup sell. So in this particular job, it's $17,000 I'm selling it for. This is the in-house financing, but it's really $34,000 worth of stuff. And so it's telling me that if I sell this with $2,200 worth of RMR, I will make my money back in under 8 months. Now, if this was the reverse and I wanted to sell this at a profit of, 35% margin, let's say, and so many of you probably know of this feature where I can just target seek or, margin seek my pricing. So let's say instead this is a $56,000 job and I'm at my typical 35% margin. And there is no rate creation multiple now because I'm making a profit on this job rather than recouping cost. So this is more so what I would probably see with a third-party lender is that you're recouping the outright sale price of the job, whereas maybe on the home alarm, small business, we're kind of giving away, for lack of a better word, the systems and then getting the higher recurring monthly revenue and longer term agreement. So you're probably on one side of the fence or the other. Some of you have some mixture and we work to customize that. But the idea is that by adding in these different formulas as the user, you can just easily hit include my finance options. It does all the math for you. I'm going to regenerate this again now to show it in a way that I want with my financing. It doesn't like something, but that's okay. And so by regenerating this, it would say I have $56,000 job or finance it with us for 3 years or 5 years. And if you have DocuSign or eOriginal, you can add that in there as well as them initialing to accept one of these. I also have seen teams usually put, this is based on your credits approval and click here to apply, or maybe a QR code or something like that. Whereas when it's self-financing, you might not have that type of information. So a question came in, can the app show the profit in dollars as well as the percentage? And yes, in this particular case, or in the job itself, it's showing the GP percentage, but in the reporting, which I'll go to in a moment, it will literally say what your GP dollars are and the GP percentage. So yes. Before I go there, I did want to show financing in Quote Anywhere, because if you are quoting right in front of somebody, like let's pretend we're doing that and turn presentation mode on, all I see is sell pricing, and the customer comes to me and says, I don't have $7,500. No problem. I can go into my sales status and go to my lease section. And from here, I can just say, yep, include the 3-year lease and the 5-year lease. But what's nice, and this is in We Estimate as well, you might have noticed this estimate question mark, and there's some check boxes here. By saying, yes, I want to play with this formula and use it in the estimate, I can actually work with the customer to determine something that will work for both us and the client. So let's say you had a standard 8-month rate creation multiple, and that's just company mandated, right? It's locked in. So I can lock it or unlock it, depending on my user rights. And then I can work with the customer to say, okay, if it's a 20% deposit save to finance this system, you would put $500 down and you would pay $672 a month in order for me, the company, to make back my $7,500. Now, if you're doing kind of the longer term deal and you really only wanted to add, $20 more to their monthly, then maybe your rate creation multiple is a little more. Maybe it's 18 months and they're going to put a 50% deposit down. But the idea is that you can play with these numbers and say, the customer said, well, I can only really afford another $100 a month. Okay, then you'll have to put 70% down. or maybe it will make the rate creation multiple go up. It really just depends on what you're going to approve in the system. And it may literally require an approval, or the commission may go up or down. But this way, the salesperson's equipped to not leave without striking some sort of deal, right? Hey, let's get to a sweet spot together on what you can put down and what the additional lease is going to be. And so then I can then include that in the proposal. And when I generate my document, it'll show that section. So any questions about finance lease before I move on to some other options? This is something that I've seen utilized more and more, especially, for kind of software, software security as a service, where it's kind of all baked into the service and preventative maintenance type of agreement. And so easy way to auto calculate and make it really easy for the user to not have to go crunch it into some financing Excel or to try to get to these numbers. Just build all the formulas in WeSuite and then just simply include it. Now, if I did that estimate within the WeEstimate screen where I just showed in Quote Anywhere, it would pop open the RMR toolbar. And so you can see there's $2,300 worth of RMR plus my $1,200 monthly lease, so that I can make my money back in 8 months with a deposit of $3,100. Now their total monthly is $36. If you had not excluded all of your RMR services from the RCM, then it would instead say, it would include this $2,300 in this lease amount, in which case it may only add, $200 of RMR, because it's adding this into the factor of whether or not you're recouping your cost or your sell in that 8-month period. Okay. All right, so moving on, and I'm just checking because the question that came in about the GP dollars, it does show in the app live, the reporting is all live happening, but I'm going to double check for you if it's a column in the grid itself, because it may be. So good question, and just bear with me, everyone, so we can answer Wayne's question. And so the area of the software I'm in right now is all the different grid rights. Down below here, all these columns is what's called grid rights. And you either have access to certain fields, it's either visible or it's not, and you're allowed to edit it or you're not. And it may additionally have thresholds, like maybe you can edit GP, but you can't ever go below 30 or something. So I see GP percentage. I don't see GP dollars. So I will double check that and look in the folder summary as well. Yeah, it's not showing me the GP dollars as a field within the estimate itself. It does in Quote Anywhere, so I can show you here, which is where everything's going anyway. Many of you will probably no longer use WeEstimate when 612 comes out. But if I click this additional information, it's meant to be a little secretive. So if you are quoting in front of somebody, they don't just see your profit margins and stuff. But when I click that, it shows me my GP percentage and my GP dollars in dollars. So that's exactly the answer to your question, Wayne. So with Quote Anywhere, you'll see it all live within the job. In WeEstimate, you can see it by running a report, but which is where I was going to go to next anyway, because when you run a report, this is the best way that I found to find good upselling opportunities. So if you've not used any of the reporting in WeSuite, I really recommend poking around here. I believe we have done a session on it recently that's recorded, or I know end of year we usually do a lot of prospecting and goal setting and report generating. But essentially, I'm going to do a few clicks here. I want to see, all recurring that I sold in 2024. So I'm going to say 2024, all months, filtered by sold jobs, and may or may not turn on other people. I'm just going to keep it me, okay? And then in this report itself, I can choose on the columns I want on or off. So maybe I don't want this data. And so you're going to see one of these fields is GP dollars, GP percent. So that way, so if you wanted to see overall GP dollars for a time frame or for a customer, this is how you're going to do that. And so if I am just going through this and turning some things on and off, because the objective I'm trying to get at is, hey, when are things renewing, or what service did someone buy and now I can upsell them on other services. And so I'm just going to build this out now. And almost done. These are all fairly new columns as well as of 610. Total cost, total labor hours, cost and sell, total material cost and sell. All right, and so let's say I'm happy with this, right? And I'm going to call, in order to not have to build this again, I'm going to add this as a view, and I'm going to call it, you know, my 2024 sold jobs. And now that's a view now I could come back to and pull up, and I don't have to select all the settings and everything that I just did. So now I can see all the quoted RMR that I sold last year and the date that I sold it. So if I wanted to go and say, okay, I didn't sell. So first thing I've done with some people, right? They don't always go in and sell service agreements during the sale. It may be another sales team that does that, or it could be just an upsell after the fact. So you can just filter which projects had no RMR on them. And then there we go. There's my short list of projects. I can open up those accounts, see what I sold and what I could potentially upsell from a recurring standpoint. Similarly, if I have things like job type, system type, and other columns on, so I can get more of an idea of what they had purchased on that original sale, then I can see what upsell opportunities there are for other system types or for recurring services. And so then by double clicking any of these rows, it will open up the job for me. And then that could be a new potential opportunity for some RMR upselling, or you may be required to renew certain types of agreements. And so that's also why I had the job closed date on. I can sort that by date so I can see, okay, this is renewing again January of 3rd. And so I need to start and get that renewal going. So what I like about this is you don't necessarily have to rely on your finance team to produce this information for you. I can run it right through my WeSuite from just historical stuff that I've sold. For some of you, maybe the start date isn't the same as the date that it was closed, so maybe you have to rely on the finance team. But if you are not already using the reporting, I would really recommend that you do so. Even from just a forecasting perspective, if I switch this and said 2025, all quotes that I have out on the street right now in negotiation, this is going to give me a whole different view where now I can see I have 300,000 of outright sale and 18,000 of RMR quoted to be closed. My total contract value, which is the term, the RMR times the term length plus the outright sale price is showing here too. And then here's low-hanging fruit, or, you know, I can again sort this and see what projects don't have RMR on them that I need to make sure I estimate some recurring services on. And then also which projects maybe I turn off job close date and instead switch it in for document sent date. And so I can see, okay, I sent that proposal or quote to somebody, and am I going to win it? Am I going to lose it? Am I going to forecast it for Q1? You know, I can do all those edits right from within the reporting grid here. All right, and so then lastly, if you are adding RMR to an existing subscription, there are some columns that help to facilitate that right within WeEstimate. So you may have it on in your system, and if you don't, you would just go right back to these grid rights I was showing you and turn it on. But there is a column called Current RMR. And so this happens a lot, in why we created the column is that you are maybe only adding 10, $30 to their existing services, but you want to show them that their grand total and their new monthly is X, right? So you don't want to, let me open a different job that's a little smaller. So Rogers Bagels, okay, let's say they're opening another store, and now to monitor both stores is going to be, you know, another $50 a month. But they already pay $50 a month for the first store. And so I'm going to just remove all the items I already have in here. And so I'm going to go and grab RMR and to say to monitor this next store is going to be another $50 a month. Now, if I add, I don't want these in here, just delete it one by one. Okay, so it's $50 a month. Now, if they're already paying $50 a month, I can enter 50 into the current RMR. And now on my document, it could potentially display $100 as your new monthly, but I'm really only selling $50 of new RMR. That's what I'm going to export into the accounting system. That's what my report's going to show. That's what I'm going to be commissioned off of. But this allows me to show the grand total to the customer without selling $100 when it's really only $50 added. Okay. So this is something we need to program to your document. If you're not already doing it now, it is a simple formula for us to add. But basically, we just take into consideration that if anything is in current RMR, it either could be displayed in the same place if it's just your new monthly is X and you're now re-signing a new 3-year agreement for that $100. Or some people may show it in a separate area to say your monthly was X, so it shows 50, and now you're adding 50, and now it's 100. And so this feature will make its way into Quote Anywhere as well, much like everything else, but very handy to use right now in WeEstimate. All right, well, if there are any other questions, feel free to ask. That's hit everything in my agenda, so I will pass it on to Janina, who will fill us in on the topics for next month.
Thank you, Sam. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope that you've learned some good information to take back for yourselves and share with your teams. And again, if you need to refer to this webinar, it will be uploaded tomorrow on our website by this time. It will be under education, training, and webinars. And don't forget to mark your calendars for our upcoming webinars. So on November, for the admin training, we'll be discussing commission management system module to automate commission calculations. And for our sales user training, we will talk about WeSuite best practices, and that will be on November 18th, same time, 1 to 2 p.m. Take care and have a great day, everyone.